We deserve wish.com Captain America. Howdy friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome, and I hope you enjoy my content. Today I'm talking about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier and what it says about America and where this country needs to be headed as a society. Before I get into that, I just wanted to thank all of you for watching, whether you're just tuning in for the first time or if you've been watching since my first attempt at making a video. I'm so happy that y'all are watching this at all. And I know this is a really small channel, but it's been a month and I'm psyched that I have more than 2 or 3 views a video. I love seeing y'all here, and yeah, thanks for all of your support. So I'm gonna end up spoiling a lot of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so you've been warned, because I know not everyone can spend their Friday mornings with a big bowl of cereal watching whatever shenanigans Sam and Bucky got up to for the last 6 weeks. Or maybe you don't have a Disney Plus account, which, totally fair. Still, as much as this is obviously a ploy to make Disney Plus look better to people, I really enjoyed the show. And since I'm scripting this and filming this within a few days of the show finishing off, my opinions might change as I go back and rewatch and think about the show a little bit more. So if you disagree with some of my takes, that's cool, because I might end up disagreeing with myself as well. That's just part of being a person. This show did kind of leave me confused on if I'm supposed to like the iteration of the US government that was presented here or not. It felt like there were just some really mixed signals, and I can't tell if it's because shows and movies have to get approval from the United States government and military in order to be able to use their weapons and whatnot, so they sort of towed the line for that reason. I also thought it was really interesting that they went with making the villains a left-wing terrorist organization type of deal. Though I'll give the credit that they were never really the antagonists of this show. And as much as I absolutely hate John Walker's character, I don't think he was the main antagonist either. I think that the real antagonist of this show, or season of this show, was societal expectations. It's what the characters expected out of themselves and each other, as well as what was expected of them by society, that led to the conflicts within this show. Okay, and maybe you're asking, what does all of this have to do with American culture and where it should strive to go next? Well, do I have some takes for you. John Walker is the Captain America we deserve. Hope you have a great rest of your morning, day, or night. Bye! Okay, I'm sorry. The video's not over, but I'm right. And deep down, you know it too. John Walker is a Captain America who has been militarized to the point of almost brainwashing. And at first, I kind of felt bad for him in that aspect, barring when I first saw him at the end of episode 1 and called him fake Captain America. But am I wrong? He just seemed to be someone who meant well and was trying to do his best, but he was never gonna be Steve Rogers. His expectation is to just be the perfect patriotic symbol that Steve ended up hating about the job of Captain America in the first movie. John doesn't seem to realize that, though. In fact, he lacks a lot of self-awareness within his job as Captain America. For example, when Bucky asks him if he's jumped on a grenade before, John says that he has multiple times with the suit and the helmet. And for some reason, it doesn't dawn on John that Steve didn't have the suit when he did that. He didn't even have super soldier serum when he did that, which I think is very telling of the American culture today. John Walker is a huge reflection of America as it currently is. That feels apparent to me in a few ways. For example, John tries to work with Sam and Bucky until it's clear that they want nothing to do with him. This is something that he takes to a more intense, competitive, and personal level when he realizes that Sam and Bucky are just gonna do their own thing and work alone. Instead of trying to understand their logic, he goes in guns blazing, literally. Which also makes me think of how much of a reflection he is of America's values. John Walker literally is a shoot first, ask questions later type of person, much like almost everyone in this country who holds a similar position to him. He ruins Sam's plan of trying to talk down Karli purely because he just gets too trigger happy, something that this country is guilty of in multiple ways, within police brutality and our own relations with the rest of the world, for instance. America is a country that chooses to buckle down in its values without wondering about the perspective of others. John Walker is a product of his time and country, something that is rubbed in our faces when he murders a man with the shield, reminiscent of current events, if we're being honest here. This isn't even the person who actually killed his best friend, and the fact that he received a slap on the wrist for murdering someone in broad daylight in front of so many people is telling as well. Like, boo-hoo, you can't be Captain America anymore because you committed a murder in broad daylight where there were tons of witnesses pulling out their cameras and watching you. Well, you gotta settle for US agent now. Which I have heard that's who he is in the comics. I don't really read the comics. I just have some friends that do. And personally, if he ends up getting his own show or movie, it's a skip for me. John Walker turned out to be the most insufferable and infuriating character to watch in the whole show. And I'm assuming that's what the actor was going for, so props to him for making me totally hate his character. He wasn't even the main villain, and all I wanted was for him to just fall on his ass because his character vexed me so much. Let me make this clear. I sympathized with the young woman in charge of an extremist, borderline terrorist organization more than I did him. So let's talk about her. Let's have a moment of silence to mourn Karli because I feel like she would have been so compelling to keep around in the future installments or even have had an interesting story of her own. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, Karli is an extremely sympathetic character and brings us into the world of the post-snapping that we haven't had to think of before. Like, we were told we would get that sort of in Spider-Man Far From Home, but in my opinion, we really didn't see much of the fallout. We got a taste of it in WandaVision when Monica came back, but we really got to discover how this affected everyone in the world through Karli and her cause with the Flag Smashers. We find out that the people in charge of relocating everyone post-snapping after being brought back are essentially kicking people to the curb and putting them in refugee camps with less than adequate care in every aspect that you could imagine. This is a major problem in any society, obviously, and it makes complete sense that there would be people who want to fight against those in power if those are the types of decisions that are being made. The way Karli is written and the way she acts in a lot of the show makes her very sympathetic, and it's very easy to understand her character. That isn't to say she's a completely good person. She still kills people, or almost kills people, or thinks that she's about to, and she doesn't have too much guilt over it in the show. After all, she's an extremist and is willing to do just about anything to ensure that her ultimate goal and cause gains traction and support and succeeds. It's to a point that it's all she really cares about, and she has the expectation that she must be the one who puts herself on the line in order to make the world a better place. And that's the thing about ideologies. You don't realize how extreme you are until it's really put in front of you and you have to evaluate yourself. which is what happens for the few moments that Sam actually gets a chance to talk to her and really make her think about what she's doing. It's clear that she wants a better world and she wants to see things improve, and she doesn't want the average person to suffer, but she's willing to cause a lot of harm to reach her goal in return, which is something we see with just about every extremist group out there, whether they have a morally justified reason or not. And something that I don't think someone like John Walker understands is that if Karli were just killed in cold blood without anything to be said about it, someone would have just come and taken her place. Maybe that's even what'll end up happening within the future of the MCU. I don't really know where things are headed with that. But we see this in extremist groups all the time. The way to end extremism and curb divisions isn't by killing or harming people who are in power positions within those groups. It's by talking to each other and understanding where everyone's coming from. Of course, you shouldn't always try to reason with every extremist or extremist group ever. I'm not trying to condone rationalizing ideas like eugenics or anything horrible along those lines. That's the exact opposite of what I'm advocating for. What I'm trying to say is that as a country, when people make good points that you may not necessarily agree with or you think are very extreme, like the fact that some people are receiving poor treatment simply because they survived an apocalypse and they don't want to be treated as second-class citizens, we should try to listen and reason and come to a solution that benefits all parties. Because when you put it into perspective, Karli had a lot of good points. She just had a violent way of going about it that could have been stopped if people in power actually listened to her and tried to hear out what her goals were. I feel like if anyone in this show went through a ton of character development, it was Bucky. All the characters developed, of course, but Bucky's progression was something that really showed a lot of depth to his character. He went from berating Sam for choosing to not become Captain America like Steve wanted, to realizing the challenges that it would have posed for Sam, and recognizing that he was wrong to be angry with Sam in the first place. And I think that Bucky symbolizes where a lot of us on the left are, well, white and white-passing people specifically. We want to see more diversity, and we don't understand why it's not there. After all, it's just as easy as accepting the shield from old man Steve Rogers, who looks weirdly like Joe Biden, and then zooming around with the stars and stripes, right? Except it isn't. There's so much more to it than that. Was Steve's judgment right? Yes, of course, but that's not the point. And I think that's where Bucky has to come to terms with everything as the show progresses. He has to realize that he doesn't need Steve's good opinion in order to be and continue to be a better person. Bucky gives himself the expectation that he's always going to sort of be the Winter Soldier and that his only saving grace was Steve's approval and his belief in him. This is something that I think the therapist in the show was trying to help solve, but just didn't quite reach Bucky in a conventional way because he never fully opened up to her during their sessions. So I don't think the therapist ever really knew what Bucky needed in order to properly move on from his time as the Winter Soldier and all of the fighting that he was involved with. What Bucky really needed was to accept himself and to realize that he needed to move on. Something that Sam really did help him to realize. And their friendship dynamic in the show is great. I love it. Not gonna get into this queer-baity weird stuff within this video. Mayhaps another time. It's always nice to see a friendship bond where there is so much mutual respect and belief in one another. And even when Bucky disagrees with Sam's stance on the shield, it doesn't take away the respect there. Bucky still trusts Sam to take care of situations on his own. He knows that Sam can handle someone like Karli with reason and a conversation because that's what Sam does. And when Bucky realizes that he was wrong to be disappointed in Sam, that's where he has so much growth and actually apologizes and admits his wrongdoings, which is huge for people these days, because this whole season has forced Bucky to realize that maybe Steve didn't think everything through. Not because Sam is incapable of being Captain America, but because having a Black Captain America is different. It's what's needed, but not everyone's going to be ready to make that change, and Sam has every right to be hesitant about it. Yes, it needs to happen, but Bucky has to realize that it needs to be up to Sam's discretion rather than Steve's. Most importantly, that Bucky's opinion on the matter is null and void. His battle lies in forgiving himself and trying to provide closure for himself and others. I never felt like I knew enough about Sam as a character to understand or really appreciate him with how he was presented in the MCU thus far. And after this show and really getting to see him shine, he's easily one of my favorites in the whole franchise now. The way that Sam is able to keep such a level head around people that would cause someone like John Walker to get trigger happy is such a juxtaposition between the America we see now and where we could be, where we need to be, and where we need to head. He gives away the shield because he doesn't think that anyone should have it. And it's always the person who denies power like that who should be given it. We also see that's the case when Sam goes and talks to Karli, when he tries to build some type of trust so he can understand her because he knows that really she's just a kid who's been through a lot. They don't give her an exact age, but I'd guess anywhere between late teens and early 20s, so that's pretty young. She's trying to figure out herself, and Sam knows that. He knows that he can figure out a way to make things work for the better with her, because he's someone who specifically helps people who have been through trauma like soldiers. Sam handles these issues with such empathy and kindness, and that's not saying that he's a doormat at all. When it comes down to it, he'll tell someone like Bucky to get his crap together. Or he'll force a bunch of senators to face the realities of the harsh world that they're living in, where, yes, the people who came back from the snapping do need places to stay, but so do the people who lived through all of that. It's a tough call, but Sam makes it clear that there needs to be a choice that helps everyone, not just one group. And it's obvious that Sam understands Karli's death isn't the end of any conflicts with the Flag Smashers. He knows this is a cause that lots of people believe in, and it's something that he can see the logic behind, whether he fully agrees with it or not. So he doesn't let Karli die in vain, and I think that really just adds to the quality of his character. Sam isn't another Steve Rogers, and that's a good thing. What matters, though, is that he has just as much compassion and sense of what's right as Steve would have. Maybe even more so because it's been Sam's job to understand what others are going through. Sam Wilson as Captain America shows what America could be if we really listened to each other and made an effort to get along. If we listened to minorities and took their experiences into account, then we would see a huge improvement in the way that this country runs. We shouldn't go into situations hot-headed and guns blazing, but instead ask ourselves questions and try to come up with solutions that will last for longer than a few hours and benefit more than one group of people. I don't remember what Tumblr post I saw this on or what blog posted it, but I remembered someone saying that Sam Wilson is the perfect embodiment of do no harm and take no shit. And that rings true, especially as this show drew to a close. And yeah, this is just a superhero TV show, but I think seeing someone as kind and thoughtful as Sam Wilson as a fictional symbol of this country is a way of showing that times have the ability to change for the better. So, in conclusion, we deserve Wish.com Captain America. However, we need Sam Wilson's Captain America, and that's what we get, thankfully. And yeah, right after the last episode aired, there's talks of Captain America 4, but if it's anything like how this show was, I think there's a lot of potential. It'll be nice to see how Sam handles being Captain America on a daily basis. It'll be cool to see what happens from now on with the Flag Smashers, because They're obviously not going anywhere, as was teased towards the end of the series, and if they do, then that's just kind of poor writing. I'm cautiously optimistic about the fate of this area of the MCU, and there are other characters I could have talked about, but these are the four who I feel like I had the most grasp on and could delve into the most authentically. There's a lot to unpack with this series, and I might do some more unpacking at a later time, so if that interests you, or if content along the lines of media analysis is up your alley, then hit that subscribe button and ring the little bell so you can see what I come up with next. I hope you have a good rest of your morning, day, or night. Bye!